But the biggest problem that really stands out to me is this 5 to 8 hours of video games a day outside of his work schedule, because that means that that's 5 to 8 hours that if he was spending with the baby instead, she could spend sleeping, number one, or doing anything else that makes her feel a little bit less exhausted and a little bit less like she's drowning. The fact that he is working from home and she's not at work, and she had to get a nanny to help out because of the fact that he's not as helpful as he could be, that's a pretty bad sign. Good versus bad partners and what they look like. Here are some Reddit stories all about relationship conflict. Our first one is titled, Am I the a-hole for not wanting to split expenses proportional to income? I live with my boyfriend in a flat that he owns, fully paid off. His father gave it to him. The whole building was built 6 years ago and it's in a very popular area. I pay my boyfriend half of the market rate rent, which we update every year by looking how much the flats are being rented out for in the building complex, which is a lot of money, but I agreed to it. Other than this, we did everything else 50-50 in the past. I got a new job with a significant pay increase, and now my boyfriend says we should start splitting expenses proportional to income because that's fair. I told him I don't think it's fair that I should stop paying for more just because I got a new job and nothing else changed. I already pay him rent, enough rent that would get me a same-sized flat a few streets away, so it's more than fair to him. He made some, in my opinion, very weak arguments and accused me of ripping him off. That's when I told him that under no circumstances will we split expenses proportional to income. Now that I've calmed down a bit, I'm worried whether I'm in the wrong, especially since my best friend told me that this is how they do it with her boyfriend too, and my boyfriend owning the flat is irrelevant here. Am I the a-hole? What I find kind of rough about this one is that their roles here are quite confused. So on the one hand, it's not really that it's not that they're cohabiting, right? To some extent. Their relationship, she's not living with him just as girlfriend, boyfriend, and, you know, they're both paying into the same type of household and trying to pay off all the bills together. She says they do everything 50-50, but the fact that she pays him rent says to me that their relationship in some ways is more of like a landlord renter type of relationship. And if she's acting here as a tenant, someone who's just renting the flat, then it's not really like he cannot simply raise her rent just because she got a pay raise in her job. That totally changes the dynamic of the relationship. Now, obviously, if they had sat down and they agreed on this from the beginning in terms of, okay, she can move in, but essentially she's a roommate. She's not really living with him as his partner, which is kind of what I would expect. Because honestly, a lot of people will say, is it reasonable for her to expect to be allowed to live in his house for free? And I would say that actually, if he doesn't have rent expenses, and they are living together and they want to live together because they want to actually live together, it's part of their relationship, then I would kind of say, yeah, that's pretty fair. Like, I would never charge my husband, but even when he was my boyfriend, it would never even occur to me to charge him rent to share the same space together. I think that's a bit funky. Now, I agree that maybe I think it's funky because for us, the act of living together was kind of a step closer to marriage. And so from our perspective, it was like, okay, all of these are our expenses. We're going to pay off everything together. It's not his money or my money. We're all in this together. And maybe they just don't have that attitude. I assume they don't, since they split everything else 50-50. But if she's actually paying him rent, then that also means that he has additional income as well. And so as far as I can tell, all he just sees here an opportunity to fleece more money off of her than what he was already getting. And I think that's a bit messed up. Like, I would not be treating my girlfriend as a source of income and trying to maximize how much income I get from her. I think that's a little bit dodgy. So I do not think that OP is the a-hole here. I would not be comfortable with this agreement or with this situation whatsoever. Like, it would just not work for me. I understand that a lot of people split their finances in this way. And I would probably say that in the majority of cases, I'm pretty sure that's not going to go well because I don't think that this is the right dynamic that you should aim for in a relationship. But, you know, I say that from my perspective. I know that it works for other people. You can see here some of the comments. One person says, you need a new boyfriend, honey. The fact that you're paying rent at all in his free apartment is appalling. Learn your self-worth, not the a-hole. And one person replies to this saying, if you think OP is entitled to live in her boyfriend's apartment for free since it was given to him, what if OP was given a trust fund? Would you also think that OP is entitled the dividends of his trust fund? since they were free in the same way that his apartment is free. And the first person says that that's not the same thing. And the second one says, yes, it is. Now, I actually do not agree. I think it's very, very different if you're talking about inheritance. When it comes to something like rent, it's not about being entitled to live in his house for free. It is about the fact that this is a living expense. So if you're moving in together as a couple, then theoretically you are actually moving in together. Like it's not meant to be a roommate type of scenario. As a couple, there should be a difference in your dynamic between being a couple and between being a roommate when you share space with another person. That's what I assume it's like for the vast majority of people. And so if you're going to treat it as though you're actually a couple, then the way that it would normally work is you look at both of your incomes and you look at your expenses in terms of the actual bills that you have to pay. And then based on those two things is how you decide who's paying what and why and how and so on. And if you're not paying for rent already, then that's an expense that just does not exist. So it's not like you can invent the expense out of nowhere to make it happen. Whereas when you're a roommate, then of course you can go, okay, you know what, this is my apartment. I'm not just giving you, not just letting you stay here for free because it's limiting the amount of space that I have access to in my own house. Whereas you get access to a room, for example, that I would no longer be using. That's not the case if you're actually a couple. So no, I don't think that this is comparable at all. And I still don't think that OP is an a-hole for saying no. I do kind of think that her boyfriend is a little bit weird for expecting her to pay him rent and then that he just pockets the money afterwards is a bit strange to me. Like that says to me that he does not care at all about providing for her. And if that is how men feel, then I would question how serious he is about the relationship and how seriously he treats it in general. Our next one is titled, Would I Be the A-hole if I traveled while my wife took care of a 3-month-old baby? I, 28 years old, work at a company that has headquarters based in Europe. My team at work, 6 people in total, is being flown out to Europe for 2 weeks to coordinate and prepare a product launch with our colleagues there. While we are there, my team wants to do some sightseeing, hiking, etc. I have not had the opportunity to experience another country before or travel to this extent. The issue is that after our company announced this trip, we found out that my wife, who's 29, is pregnant. We are very excited for this new adventure. The trip will be around the time our baby is 3 months old. My wife thinks that this is not a good time to go on this trip. It is possible for me to do this work remote, so it's not that I have to go to Europe. My wife will not be working at this time, so childcare is not a concern. Our in-laws both live within 10 minutes, so we are also not without a support system in the 2 weeks. I'm conflicted because on the one hand, I would love this experience, but I also know that it would be unfair to leave my wife to take care of the child for 2 weeks while I'm away having fun. Would I be the a-hole if I went on this work trip? Now, Reddit did actually come down on him pretty hard and called him the a-hole for this, for even considering the idea of going on this trip. For me personally, it really would depend a lot on the baby and what it's like to look after the baby. If the baby is a pretty calm baby, is not colicky, is not screaming his head off all the time, is not one of those babies that never sleeps, and so on and so forth. So some babies are really difficult to handle and other babies are a little bit easier. If it's a relatively easy baby to handle and it's 2 weeks, so it's a really limited time span, like I would much rather if it was 1 week rather than the 2 weeks, but I can live with 2 weeks. And I have support around me, so both in-laws live within 10 minutes away, so it's not like they're very far away. Then I would actually be okay with my husband going at this point. My reasoning for it would be, this seems to be like a rare opportunity. It's not something that happens very often because he says this is the first time that they've done it. I definitely think that it makes a big difference when you're present at these types of events in terms of things like prospects for promotions, ability to network and make deeper connections with people at work, and so on. I really do believe that makes a difference when you show up. And so I would probably say, yeah, even if it's possible to do the work remotely, it's probably going to be okay for him to go. That would be my perspective as the potential wife in this scenario. I totally understand though why another wife would be like, nah, you know what, I'm really not into it. The only thing that I think makes it a little bit unfair here is the fact that both sets of in-laws are really close by and presumably they have a pretty good relationship with them. So my assumption would be that it's not that he's leaving her without any support system whatsoever. Leaving her alone for 2 weeks completely by herself is a lot tougher. And I wouldn't be so understanding if I felt like this happened very often. Like if it was one of those companies that does a retreat of some kind or a trip like this every few months, then I would probably also say this is too much travel, and I'm not very happy about that. But you know, that's a personal measure. In general, I do not think that this is one of those situations where I'd say he's the a-hole for considering going, because it's not even that he's like, I want to go and I don't care what she says, in which case I'd be like, yeah, okay, you are an a-hole. But I think he's saying, you know, I really want the experience, but I also don't really want to leave my wife, and what's the right way here? And under those circumstances, you can only make a decision with your wife, you know? No one else on the internet is going to give you a better piece of advice. Now you can see here some of the comments. One person says, would I be, they kind of rewrote it, so it's in quotations. Would I be the a-hole if I left my postpartum wife to take care of our first child by herself for 2 weeks after she carried them to term, gave birth to them, and dealt with the genuinely terrifying things that come with giving birth? I mean, it's not like she needs my support in this crucial time at all. I mean, I might be her spouse, but she has in-laws around. I don't even really have to be a father during the night, so my wife can get some rest. And honestly, it's not like she ever needs a break from being a first-time parent. She should be fine with little to no sleep with a newborn, constantly getting up and down to feed and change them throughout the day and night, with no relief from me, the spouse who claims to love her, but doesn't really understand what the big deal is. You're so right, OP. What could go wrong if you take that trip? You would be the a-hole. You already know it. You just came here hoping that someone would say that you wouldn't be the a-hole, so you'd feel better about it. Now, I think this is really unfair, actually. A 3-month-old baby is like, okay, I mean, if it would be a 2-week-old baby and you're like, this is ridiculous and insane, then I would be like, yeah, sure, fair enough. That I completely understand. This description that people have at the beginning, that after she carried them to term, gave birth to them, and dealt with the genuinely terrifying things that come with giving birth. Now, again, I would also understand this if she had a super traumatic birth experience, if there's some reason to believe that she would have postpartum depression. You know, I know that this is like an early decision and you can only make it in advance, and that's kind of that's part of it. But unless something unexpected happens that does say, yeah, she had a genuinely terrifying experience and she really, really needs support, then I think people have this perception of birth as though it's the most horrifying thing to ever happen to a woman. And for the majority of women, thankfully, this is not the case. And then everything else, I don't even really need to be a father during the night so she can get some rest. I'm like, okay, it's 2 weeks. Yeah, he's not saying that he wants to leave for months on end. If the 2, 3, 4 weeks before that, he's a really present, active father. He helps her, that she gets all the rest that she needs. She has time to sleep, that she feels supported and happy. Then you know what? Actually, 2 weeks, you can make it through 2 weeks with a bit less sleep. And it is okay to have in-laws over for 1 night or 2 nights or whatever, so that you don't go completely crazy if the sleep thing is a problem. So I think this is a little bit extreme. Like people do take this stuff quite harshly. I get it. I do think it's always nice to have both parents around as much as possible. I would completely agree with this. But I just don't think it's that big of a deal when it's a one-time thing, and it's rare and there are reasons for it. The next one, seriously considering divorce or separation. I need perspective, and I would especially value the perspective of new fathers if any of you can ask your spouse to share his thoughts. I'm at the end of my rope with what seems like a very uneven share of responsibilities in my marriage. My spouse and I have a beautiful 12-week-old daughter. I've been on maternity leave since she was born and will be starting work again in a couple of weeks. Both my husband and I work from home. My husband runs his own business and I work for a large national brand leading a department run by a remote team. My daughter is not breastfed because she has had continued issues latching, so I pump and supplement with formula. She will sleep anywhere between 4 to 7 hours at night, starting late at about 1 a.m. She won't sleep in her bassinet or any safe sleep space that allows me to nap during the day. I exclusively am the one waking up when she wakes up at night and putting her down to sleep at night. This means I'm getting about 3 to 4 hours of sleep each day because I also have a pumping schedule to keep up. My husband, on the other hand, sleeps in and plays 5 to 8 hours of video games a day outside of his varied work schedule. He'll watch her when I ask and sometimes offers, but his max willingness seems to be around 2 to 3 hours when he insists on handing her back to me, especially if she's fussy. He feels like 2 to 3 hours is an extremely long time. When he does watch her, he's trying to play video games or watch YouTube the whole time and gets annoyed when she gets hungry or he has to pick her up and carry her around to calm her. I do think he loves her, but I also think he gets annoyed that the needs of a baby take away from his interests. He'll thank me for giving him a me day on the weekends, letting him nap even though he's gotten more than 8 hours of sleep, and letting him play video games with his friends, which feels like a slap in the face when you haven't had a me day or 8 hours of sleep in 3 months. I even hired a nighttime nanny on my own dime for a few hours several days a week so I can get some sleep. And to that point, I have been supporting him while he builds his business for several years now, and I am still the breadwinner, paying for over 75% of our living expenses. I even bought our home single-handedly. He'll be paying for a work time nanny when I'm done with my leave, but even then he only wanted to pay for 4 hours a day, 4 days a week. He says he'll watch our daughter mornings until the nanny gets here, but I'm not confident given what I've experienced so far. He tends to use his work as an excuse. He's building his business to where I can quit my job, so he needs to be on his A game, but this is going on 5 years now. I do believe he's really trying to do this and is giving an honest effort. It's just hard after so much time has passed. I know they say not to make any decisions like this in your baby's first year, but I can't help thinking how much easier my life would be if he moved out and I could get an au pair by moving my office into his office to create a guest room. I hate thinking this way, but when all you do is fantasize about how you can just get something as basic as sleep, it's hard not to. I'm just so tired. Maybe marital counseling would help. Now, one of the first things I'd say about this one is, yeah, honestly, making decisions when you're short on sleep is not a good idea. And definitely being sleep deprived just takes it out of you like almost nothing else. So I get very irritable, very just emotional. I completely lose my mind if I haven't had sleep for even like 2-3 nights in a row, and I would not be able to continue functioning at 3 to 4 hours of sleep every day. If I was not feeling supported or helped out at all and had that as a problem, then I would completely lose my mind. So I totally understand where OP is coming from. This is not the best partner in the world. I honestly think the biggest problem, she has a couple of things that she mentions here, but the biggest problem that really stands out to me is this 5 to 8 hours of video games a day outside of his work schedule, because that means that that's 5 to 8 hours that if he were spending with the baby instead, she could spend sleeping, number one, or doing anything else that makes her feel a little bit less exhausted and a little bit less like she's drowning. The fact that he is working from home and she's not at work, and she had to get a nanny to help out because of the fact that he's not as helpful as he could be. That's a pretty bad sign. And again, I'm not knocking people for getting nannies or for getting themselves extra help whenever they need it. Like, I think that that's absolutely essential, and moms should do that all the time as they need help. But it sounds to me like he's the one who's really slacking here, and that's kind of rough. I would also get pretty resentful and pretty bitter if I was handling childcare 100% by myself, unable to sleep. Not only does he play video games, but like watching him play video games while I'm struggling and tired, and then also I'm still the primary breadwinner. Like that's not a happy marriage. That's not a recipe for a happy marriage at all. I think that like how I would deal with this situation would be to focus first on getting 1 night or 2 nights of at least relatively decent sleep, or spending 2 days where I really nap a lot throughout the day as well. So it's like 2 hours, a good 2-hour chunk when the baby's napping or whatever. I would first focus on getting some sleep and making him do whatever it is I need to make him do in order to allow me those hours of sleep. And then we would be really sitting down and having a very, very, very in-depth, open conversation about our roles, what each of us are contributing to our marriage and to our household, and how we can move on from here together. Because I do not think that this is sustainable. Like, this is the type of thing that will completely burn her out, of course. And I don't think that it's necessary to divorce or to separate at this stage. I would really invest a lot in trying to fix it. I also think that dads tend to struggle. The majority of dads, as far as I can tell, tend to struggle at least a little bit in these early months when the babies are really young, and it's a lot harder for dads to connect to a baby at that point. This isn't the case in my personal experience. My husband connected with our kid quite quickly and quite soon. Like he didn't have a problem with that. But I understand that other dads might. And so I would give it a bit of time, and I would really try to work on it. Fundamentally, I do not think that you can have that type of conversation and have it be productive and useful when you are really tired and pissed off. And so that's the first thing that I would try to get out of the way. But the gaming thing, I would want to get rid of that. I don't even have a problem with husbands like gaming. I know it's become a bit of a trope where a lot of wives have a really major issue with their husbands just having hobbies in general. I don't have a problem with that, but 5 to 8 hours of video games a day when you have a 3-month-old child, that's just not how that works. I'm sorry, that's not how that works. So that's definitely an indication that he does not have the right priorities. Now, OP has an edit here where she added some more info. She says, it wasn't always like this. I had really high hopes for our little family. He was fantastic when I was pregnant. I had post-loss PTSD during my pregnancy because of an extremely traumatic loss that I had prior to this pregnancy. He was also super dad and husband when we were in the hospital for longer than we had anticipated, doing everything I needed since I was having a rough recovery and caring for our baby. But when we got home, he just went back to his pre-baby habits, which were fine pre-baby because we'd game together as a favorite activity and watch shows. What would change if I left? I wouldn't leave my house, maybe sell it and move after a year or so, but with only me and my baby here, it would make space for an au pair, which would be tremendous help to me and my little one. Have I made myself clear on multiple occasions, but it's always one excuse or deflection after another. That's why I'm at the point I am. Somehow I always get turned into the bad guy in these discussions, which is why I wanted perspective, wondering, am I the a-hole? Is there something I'm being unreasonable about? I'm so tired, I can no longer think straight. And to that one, OP, I would say that when you're so tired, you can't think straight. It's just really hard to have any type of emotionally charged conversation from that perspective. You will always come across as a little bit naggy and a little bit angry, and you have the right to be angry, and you have the right to nag, but it's just not constructive when you're actually trying to solve a problem. And you can see some of the comments here. One person says, that's unacceptable. I stand by my personal belief. Gamers are terrible parents. This is the second post this week about a non-existent gaming parent. And one person replies, yikes, nice generalization. I think anyone who allows a hobby to take precedent over parenting is not doing their best. It's not exclusive to gaming. And not all people who play video games are bad parents. And another one replies, there's a disproportionately high amount of gamers who are bad parents though, and ignoring that is negligent. And this is coming from someone who plays a lot of video games. I think people who identify as a gamer are more likely to be this, though, as opposed to people who just say that they play video games. Now, I do think that it's become something of a cliche, the video gaming husband who doesn't help out around the house. And I would guess that this is because video games are just one of the most easily accessible ways that, easily accessible and extremely popular hobbies that a lot of men have. I do actually believe that a lot of men would just still be absent parents, even if they didn't have video games, if they chose that. If they didn't actually have enough intentionality and conscious effort if they didn't put that into actually spending time with their kids, then that's kind of how that ends up going. And it's a little bit rough and it's not so good, but those are the choices that some people make. One person here says, I honestly don't think you should make this decision when your baby is so young. You might regret it later. Really, the only thing that's going to change for you after breaking up is that he won't be in your line of sight, in my opinion. You're already paying for everything and you're going to get a little more help, but you won't always need it. At night, you'll be alone and eventually that baby is going to grow up, mature and have her own life and friends. And I would hate for you to have made the decision to divorce your husband because you are tired. I would wait a few months, and if you still feel like you don't want to be with him, then divorce him. I don't believe in the saying stay together for the kids. If you don't love someone anymore or aren't attracted to them, then you should break up with them and let the both of you move on and find happiness with other people. Just co-parent. I am specifically saying to wait because I feel like with hormones and being exhausted, it's hard to really see objectively. Marriage is hard. Give yours a chance in this scenario. My baby is 10 months today. My husband was awesome during pregnancy, fantastic at birth, and terrible the first 3 months. I was and still am breastfeeding. If anyone has ever breastfed in the beginning, you do it around the clock every 30 minutes to an hour as they build up your supply. It's exhausting. I didn't get any sleep, and anytime I would give her to him so I could close my eyes for a while, she would be screaming bloody murder, and he'd be asleep, not hearing a thing. So I would have to get her. I was so mad at him, so furious with him. He even dropped her twice, falling asleep, and she slipped out of his arms. But as she got older and more interactive, like most people say about men, he really became better. He's very helpful with her now and watches her all the time with no issues. He hears her now that she's bigger and will bang on the crib and scream at him. And so that's a really perfect example of sometimes making decisions when you're both under a ton of stress and you haven't slept for a really long time is going to come back and bite you later down the line. And it's fair enough that you cannot make the best, most rational decisions, most objective decisions that you can when that's your day-to-day experience. So I would also say not worth divorcing until you give yourself a shot, and do that really on sleep. Final comment here says, I'm sorry you're going through this. Men are so disappointing. I left my son's father around the 1 year mark. I was tired of pulling all the weight financially and as a parent. There's an adjustment period, but I'm honestly happier now. I have my own house and my son has stability. His father never really changed, just an adult child really. We didn't do 50-50 until my son was about 2, and recently the custody has been more like 90-10 because his dad couldn't handle 50-50. And that's fine with me. Hopefully your husband will have a wake-up call. If not, choose yourself. You'll be a better mom if you're not a stressed out, resentful, bitter wife. Now, I am one of those people who really, I don't like suggesting divorce or being like, yeah, leave that person. This is one of those situations. There are a couple of things that she says that I'd really pick up on here. One is she was tired of pulling all the weight financially and as a parent. There's definitely, I would argue in many ways, one of the bad results, one of the bad outcomes that have happened since women have entered the workforce and are now pretty, equally as successful as men when it comes to work, is that quite a lot of the traditional feminine roles, I guess, for example, things like childcare, cannot shift to men to anywhere near the same extent that, for example, women are able to work. So women will always be primarily responsible for childcare for the first year to 2-3 years of a child's life. That's not something that can change, and we can influence it to some extent by having things like formula, but it's a really fundamental part of the feminine role. And women cannot, men cannot take that on in the same way that women can take on financial responsibility for a family. And I can completely imagine why, if you're then responsible for both finances and being the breadwinner of the family, as well as for bringing life into the world and looking after it, then of course women burn out. And when men do not have a role that they are playing in a way that they are contributing, that only they can contribute, I can completely understand why relationships fall apart. And that's a real shame. That's one of the reasons I would argue that a lot of marriages fall apart when the woman starts earning more than the man. The other thing that she said here that really stood out for me is when she says the dad couldn't handle 50-50, and that's fine with me, she says. And I think that's just so sad and such a shame, because I really believe that kids do need as much contact with their dads as they have with their mom. And it's really sad to me that we've gotten to this point where a lot of single moms, particularly, but also I guess societally to a large extent, our appreciation for the role of fathers in a child's life is just very, very low. And this is all despite the fact that we have an immense amount of data about how harmful it is and can be for kids to not have access to their dads, to not have contact with their dads in their life at all. And so I think that's a real shame. That's one of those lines that really stands out to me. Says, yeah, of course it's okay for her because she gets to spend more time with her kid, but it would make me so deeply heartbroken and so sad for my child that he doesn't have a male role model in his life and that his dad is not as involved as he should be. The next one is titled, Husband Does All the Night Feeds and I Feel Terrible. Our little one is 7 weeks old right now. When we first brought her home, I woke up with her for the first 2 nights home and the 3 nights in the hospital. But I had to go right back to the hospital because my appendix burst and then I got COVID. So my mom had to watch my baby for a week while we recovered. Anyways, I noticed that I just can't wake up anymore. I used to stay up for days with her, but after I fixed my sleep schedule, it's like my body is trying to catch up with all the missed sleep. I'll go to sleep at 12 and wake up at 8 or 9 and think, wow, baby didn't wake up last night, just for my partner to tell me how many times she woke up. Now that I'm back to work, I am the breadwinner. Husband is a stay-at-home dad. It's worse. As soon as I get home at 11 p.m., I'm falling asleep while holding baby. My husband is already resentful, but I swear it's not on purpose. I've always been a deep sleeper, but I feel so guilty because he needs sleep too. He also never fails to tell me how many hours he slept. Has anyone else had this problem? I read that mothers are attuned to their baby's cry, so why can't I wake up? Now, here, I would probably guess that it has something to do with the fact that her body is just having a hard time and trying to recover from having, like, giving birth, having surgery, and then having COVID. And when I got COVID, I slept a lot. That was the way my body decided to deal with it. And so, yeah, like maybe some element of it is just that her body is a bit worn down and needs a bit of time. And I would probably say that under these types of circumstances, I would always try to look into doing some kind of shift split so that for one half of the night, she gets to sleep and then he is allowed to actually wake her up. And then for the second half of the night, he gets to sleep and she's up with the baby and has to work on that. This is not something that I would choose to do unless I absolutely had to do it. But under these circumstances, that's what I would do. And I think it's interesting, like here, to get a little bit of variety of when dads take on the role of being a stay-at-home parent and are more active and more involved in childcare, especially early on. Hilariously, you can see here some of the comments. One person says, my husband did all the night feedings too. Don't be too hard on yourself. And someone here replies, sorry, but if this was a mom complaining that her husband wouldn't wake up for night feeds, people would be up in arms saying that it's his baby too and he needs to wake up one way or another and be an equal player. Double standards aren't cool. And that I would second. I would agree with that. I think that if you are going to do this kind of split, and if he's getting resentful, then that means that he's also tired and sleep deprived. And both parents really deserve to get some sleep sometimes. So being all like, oh yeah, no, it's fine. It's just how it is. You can just accept it and move on is not a good move. One other comment here says, hello, fellow new dad here to chime in. I think your husband might need a reality check. Of course, he's doing all the night feeds in this situation. He should be. You're already doing a bunch. You cannot be superhuman. Maybe he needs to be reminded that he doesn't need to stick to a normal daily routine. He's probably exhausted if he's not sleeping when the baby sleeps. Yeah, okay, maybe it's worth saying, okay, he needs a reality check in terms of he just needs to understand that you've gone through a lot. I don't know how old the baby is now, so I don't know how long ago she says she had to go. Yeah, she doesn't really give us an estimate of how long it's been since she had this experience. And so, maybe it's already been like 3 weeks since she had COVID. And she's still struggling to sleep. She's still struggling to wake up. Well, she's not as active or as helpful with the baby as she should be. And honestly, I don't think that that's an excuse at that point. So no, I just did this way that people talk down to husbands really makes me kind of angry, especially in this type of situation where, again, if it were a woman saying, God damn it, like my baby is 7 weeks old and I am up all night, every night, and I'm so tired and my husband just lays next to me and is completely knocked out. Come on, like that's totally not fair. Another reply to that one here says, strongly disagree that the husband should be bearing this burden alone. I think they need to set up some schedule where OP sets an alarm to get up every 2 hours with the baby during a feeding or two, so the husband can get at least 4 hours uninterrupted sleep too. He's working all day since staying home with the baby is absolutely a job, and sleep is vital if he's responsible for an infant's safety. Obviously, OP went through a lot too. I'm not saying that she should feel guilty in any capacity, but the husband can only pick up so much slack before he breaks. He's only human too. If getting up isn't an option for OP, they need to bring in outside help or something until the baby is sleeping through the night. This arrangement just isn't sustainable. Exactly. I think whenever you have this moment where one person is getting resentful, then it's always a sign that something about your circumstances needs to be changed. That's all we have time for today. Feel free to like the video, leave a comment down below, and subscribe for future content. I will see you in the next one.